I'll try. Look at that deflect. Deflected her orb right back into her. There you go. There it is. Oh, we gotta go get him off with this. That's all you from there. I can't do much more for you. Alrighty, folks. So what is the deal with Yin? So Yin made her return in the version 1.2 patch. A lot of people were excited to have her back from the Paragon days, but she is a pretty complicated hero, has a lot going for her and a lot going against her. The builds have kind of shaken out now that the patch has been out for a little over 2 weeks, and we're going to talk about it today. I've got some gameplay going in the background from the stream, and we were doing a bunch of build testing with Yin right after the Winterfest patch came out, so you can check out this full stream in the description below if you want to find the Twitch link to it. It's still up on Twitch. But today we're going to go through Yin. We've got a couple sections that we're going to go through. I'm going to put some key points up on the screen for you guys, and then after that we're going to talk about her builds, and we're going to pull up a meta city. But I don't think that'll take long because her builds are pretty straightforward right now. So what's the deal with Yin? Thanks for stopping by. Hopefully this guide through the fundamentals of Yin can help you guys get better with her, or at least know how to play against her if she's not a hero that you're interested in playing. So we're going to go through her pros and her cons first from a general standpoint, and then we're going to go through specifically what she counters and what counters her, both in terms of the fundamentals and mechanics of certain heroes, as well as specific counter picks that you want to pick against her, or specific heroes on the enemy team comp that you want to see before you pick her into the comp. So let's get through it. Try to go quick for you guys. I think this should be a pretty simple one, but you know, sit back and enjoy. Hope you guys like it. So first off, Yin, the pros. What does she have going for her? She has good mobility and good spacing potential. Obviously, her auto attacks are 50%-ish of the range of a normal ranged carry's auto attacks, but she has the ability that extends them to the full range. So she has the ability to space off effectively from other melee heroes without much difficulty, and she has the good mobility of her whip dash, where she whips to a location and she pulls herself to it. That can help her close the gap on an enemy, root them specifically if she does hit them with it, or it can help her get away. So it's good mobility, it's good verticality as well. You can jump over stuff with it. It's pretty hard to catch her out of it. You know, you're going to have some heroes, maybe Seraph or something, that can get on her when she's doing that whip dash. But in general, it's going to give you pretty good safety. So, you know, good mobility and good spacing is kind of that key highlight of Yin, and it's what you're going to want to play around if you're playing Yin. Another thing she has going for her is fast clear. Now, this may not really apply at level 1, but after you get one item online, with the fact that her extended whip ability gives her 100% cleave, assuming that the first item that you're building is based on auto attacks, which it should be pretty much every time, she's going to have pretty fast clear, both in lane or in jungle. Like I said, it's going to be a little slow at the start, but once you get that 100% cleave online with an auto attack item, it's pretty quick clear. You'll out clear pretty much any solo laner, and in jungle you'll at least keep pace with most of the faster clearing junglers. They're using abilities to clear, because you're really not going to be using abilities to clear in jungle. So that's another key pro to her. The third one I want to bring up, which is kind of hit or miss, is she does have built-in sustain and mitigation. So She has built-in sustain with the passive of her extended whip ability, giving her essentially like a Sky Splitter type passive, where it does damage and also heals you on every third auto attack. So that is nice built-in sustain, but she also has built-in mitigation with the reflect, so enemy heroes that have a predictable projectile that you're going to see coming at you, or that you have an idea of when they're going to send that at you, you can reflect those projectiles. It's similar to Grimm's ability immune bubble that he can put up, except this one actually sends it back at him, so you get a little bit of bonus proc if you're able to deflect something to them. It's on a 0.8 second window that you have to hit it on, and it's after you hit the button, so it is a pretty high skill cap type ability. Of course, you have to be good with it. You have to, understand the enemy heroes and know what's going to be coming at you to get the most out of it, as well as timing it effectively. So if you can get that down, you can mitigate a lot of damage, and also you can sustain yourself with the passive, like I said, from her extended whip. And the final pro I want to talk about is really just based around her ultimate, which is Team Fight Shutdown. Her ultimate, it stops projectiles when you hit it. It also gives you movement speed and slows the enemy in the area. But the key thing is the projectiles. If you're hitting this in a tightly packed team fight or in a specific area of a team fight, it's going to stop their carries from being able to shoot through it. It's going to stop certain enemy mage abilities from being able to be fired through it. And stopping those projectiles can really give your entire team safety, as well as allowing you to close the gap. Or if you have the enemy team trapped in it already, it's going to really shut down ranged heroes in general. So melee heroes are still going to be a problem, of course. And melee ranged abilities like Steel's abilities and stuff, where you make contact with them, is still going to be a problem, but it shuts down team fights really well. So those are the pros she's got going for her. Good mobility and spacing potential, fast clear after you get at least one item online, built-in sustain and mitigation, which you can obviously improve on depending on your build, and good team fight shutdown potential. So I'm trying to think of another hero that has as good of team fight shutdown potential. I want to say something like Gadget, of course, who has a really good ult, but it's very unique that Yin has the projectile stopping. Just straight up projectiles get stopped by it, which is really cool. So a lot going for her. Those are the pros. Now let's go into the cons. So one of the big cons of Yin, I guess you could probably say this is a con for all like auto attack carries, is her damage is completely reliant on auto attacks. Her abilities do not do that much damage. The whip lasso, where she pulls herself to them, does do pretty good damage, and the whip reflect does do damage in the area around you, but it's not very significant. So you're really reliant on dealing damage with autos, which, it's a con, but it's a con for all carries, so it is what it is. Second big con I want to talk about is she has kind of a lack of CC. She does have CC in the fact that she can root someone if she hits them with the whip, or if she hits her ult in a team fight, but the CC that she has comes at the cost of her own safety. So if you want to apply CC to somebody, if you want to lock them out of somebody or out of an ability, or if you want to lock down the enemy carry for a moment or interrupt, you've got to do it at the cost of pulling yourself into their range and potentially putting yourself into a team fight situation in a location where you don't want to be. Like I said in the pros, one of her pros is spacing. And if you want to apply CC with her, basically you have to surrender that spacing completely and dive full commit onto them. So she does have CC, but it's at the cost of her own safety. Of course, that also goes with the fact that if you pull yourself into somebody to CC them with her root, you then don't have that to get back out. So it's not like a CC heavy hero like Aurora or something, where you have your CC separate from your mobility. Her CC and mobility are combined into one, which can be a pretty big con in a lot of situations where you don't have safety. Third con I want to talk about is her predictability. Based off of her kit, that she has kind of limited options. You know what she's going to be able to do. It's not like a Crunch or a Quang or something where it remains ambiguous what they're going to go for until they hit the combo or start comboing. Yin, you know what she's got. You know that she's going to have to sit back and swing the whip, potentially extend the whip's range, and then you know that if she comes in for the full commit, like I said, she doesn't have that whip to get out. So She is a very predictable hero. You could probably say that for a lot of carries that are trying to play like how she usually plays, but it's just a con that you got to keep in mind, is the other team probably has a feel for what you're going to go for. And then the last con I want to talk about, which we'll get into later when we pull up a meta city, is build diversity. So Yin, I've been trying to test builds. Obviously this stream, this background footage that I'm showing is from a stream where I was testing different builds, specifically in solo lane and some in jungle. And really it comes down to there's only a couple items that you're really wanting to build on her to get the most out of her. We'll talk about those later, like I said, but the minimal build diversity that you have with her is kind of, I guess you could say this is a con for most carries as well. It kind of just indicates to the other team what's going to happen. You know from the start of the game, this Yin is going to build pretty much auto attack crit, and that's just how it's going to be. I've tried building some Earthshaker into kind of tankier Yins. I've tried building Overlord type tankier Yins. It just doesn't work. You really don't get that much out of it. You're going to have to build her basically auto attack crit the majority of the time to get anything from her. So build diversity is a major con. So that's what I have for the pros and cons. Again, the cons are she's relying on her auto attacks for damage. She has CC, but it's at the cost of her safety if she wants to use it, whether that's her ult or her whip dash. And she's very predictable, and that, of course, goes with minimal build diversity. So it is what it is for Yin. Those are her cons. Like I said, a lot of carries probably share those cons, but that's what she's got going against her. So past pros and cons, let's talk about what she counters and what counters her. So we're going to go through what these counters are in the general sense, or general mechanical fundamental sense, and then we're going to look at specific heroes that apply these to her or that she can apply these on. So first off, what she counters. What are the whole reasons that you're taking Yin over some other carry or some other jungler or some other solo laner? So in general, she counters pretty well linear combos / low mobility, or the combination of the two. So what do I mean when I say linear combos? I mean heroes where you see them use one ability or you see them going into one specific position and you already can feel out what they're going to go for. I'm thinking of heroes like Grux, where you know that if he hits the pull, he's going to hit the smash and grab, and then he's going to knock you up or whatever, hit double pain. You know what he's looking for. I'm talking about heroes like Revenant, where you know that he's going to try to hit the mark on you, he's going to try to dump all his projectiles on you, and then he's just going to run at you in auto, and the fourth auto is going to do a ton of damage. These heroes that have a linear combo, where you're expecting what's coming, she counters those pretty well. Like I said, with the combination of low mobility, so if they don't have mobility to close the gap on you and you know what they're looking for, then you just use your spacing to avoid that combo even starting for the most part. Or situations like Aurora, where you know if she does close the gap, she's going to put the root ring around you, and then you can just whip pull yourself out because you know what she's looking for. Or she hits her ult, and then before the second stun, you pull yourself away from her. Stuff like that. These linear combos, she counters pretty well. Another thing she counters pretty well is soft targets. A lot of times, like I said, you're building her basically auto attack crit. So if the other team has a lot of soft targets, there's a good chance you're going to be able to melt them faster than they can melt you, because she has that built-in sustain and stuff. So good against soft targets. Still does pretty decent against harder targets too, but if they're building against you, if they're building that Warden's Faith kind of stuff against you, she's probably not going to be able to melt them down before they can apply CC and stuff to her. So soft targets, enemies with linear combos and low mobility. Another thing that she counters well fundamentally is tightly grouped team fights in the late game. The tighter a team fight is grouped, the more her ult is going to be applicable to shutting it down. It does have a decent range, but it's not as big of a range as a Gadget ult or a Gideon ult. It's about the same range as maybe slightly smaller than like a Zarus cage or a Decker cage. So the team fight has to be kind of tightly packed, or you have to place it in a really specific spot to get the most out of it. So it does counter tightly packed team fights in the late game very well. Jungle fights, objective fights, stuff like that, she can just shut down completely. And another thing, obviously, that she counters via her kit mechanically is predictable projectiles. So projectiles that you can see coming that either get telegraphed or you can just kind of see when to expect it. She can counter them because she can reflect them. So I'm thinking Narbash Thunks, where he holds it up and you have a indication of when it's coming. I'm thinking Zara's Spears, where it's a telegraph projectile that you're going to be able to see coming. Terra Throwing Axes, Rampage's Boulders. All of these telegraphed or predictable projectiles, she can reflect if you get good enough with her and obviously get the timing right. But she can project them back at the attacker, and that can really shut them down. But not just makes their ability useless like a Grim Bubble, but throws it back at them. So that can completely shut down stuff. I've reflected Zink's frisbees and stunned multiple people with them and stuff like that, and it can swing team fights around. So, and it also keeps her alive. So it does very good at countering that. Now on the flip side, what counters her? So what are you looking for mechanically to shut down a Yin? So kind of the opposite of what I said in the first thing that she counters, which is linear combos. One thing that counters her is erratic combos or adjustability in your combos. So I'm thinking of specifically heroes like Quang or Crunch, where you're not sure what line they're going to take with their combo. You're not sure if if Quang hits the tether on you, you're not sure if he's going to try to dash into the tether and remove his own mobility in that way and knock you up, and then he can start comboing, or you're not sure if he's going to tether you and then just hit you with the lightning bolt, which is going to hurt pretty bad on Yin because you're never building significant magic armor or health, or you don't know if he's going to ult into you and then do a ton of damage to you, slow you, and then still have his dash to keep pursuing you. So those kind of erratic combos where you're not sure what's going to happen, you're going to have a hard time with, because the question is, are you going to use your whip to try to shut down their combo if you think you can beat them, or are you going to try to use it to get out? So erratic combos or adjustability in the opponent's attack method is going to be a problem. Like I said with Crunch, is he going to dash into you and then try to use his knock-up combo, or is he going to close the gap without dashing into you and then save his double dash to catch you when you try to whip array, or stuff like that? Adjustability of the opponents is going to be a problem for her. Another thing that counters her pretty decently and that you're going to have to look out for if you're playing her is CC tanks. So CC tanks, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to melt them down before they get their damage off on you. So that's where the problem lies, is you've got heroes like Richter, you've got heroes like Steel, where even Sevrog at times for sure too, where you're not going to be able to delete them before they start CC comboing you. And if you get caught in a CC combo by Steel, as soft as Yin is, even if you dash away and he dashes onto you and hits another stun or throws the wall behind you, you're probably going to get caught. Now, are you going to die to them at a 1v1? Probably not a lot of times. Maybe Richter could shut her down in a 1v1 if it's a kind of a one-sided game or something, but you're probably not going to die to them, but they're probably going to have somebody that closes the gap on you or catches you when you're trying to get, out of that CC combo. So CC tanks are a weakness to her. You could say CC tanks are a weakness to probably a lot of carries and higher damage heroes like Kalari and stuff like that, if you don't have spacing. Now, she has the spacing to help her try to avoid that, but it's still a weakness of her. Another thing that counters her is high mobility opponents. So she only has one ability that either helps her move or helps her CC. If you look at other heroes that have high mobility and potentially CC along with it, she's going to have a hard time dealing with them. Now, I say high mobility, I'm thinking about kind of specifically Seraph, Greystone type heroes, where they can keep pursuing you, or they can pursue you and slow you, or those kind of combos, because she, like I said, there's only one movement ability, so, and no slow or anything in her kit to help her stay stuck to enemies. So high mobility is going to counter her, whether you need to pursue her and try to finish her off, or whether they're trying to get away. Good chance you're going to be able to escape the Yin, or you're going to be able to chase and finish her. So high mobility is for sure a counter. And the last counter that I want to talk about, that can be very annoying is unavoidable damage. So obviously, the cornerstone of this is a Shinbi ult, a stacked up Shinbi ult, or a Morigesh ult, or something like that. Unavoidable damage, she's going to have a hard time with. She doesn't have a shield or an ability avoid like a Quang shield, a Feng Mao shield, or an ability avoid like Grim. She's going to have to take that in unavoidable damage. And because of her kind of minimal build diversity and how you're probably building her with auto attack crit, that damage is going to hurt. And it can definitely be the end of you. If a fight's close between you and Shinbi and she has her ult, you're pretty much cooked. It's just how it is. So, going through her counters again, erratic combos or adjustability in your combo chains, CC tanks for sure, high mobility opponents, that's going to get to her or get away from her either way. She's not going to be happy about it. And unavoidable damage. Now, same thing as I said with her cons. A lot of these could probably apply to a lot of carries, but it's just the nature of how Yin is. So you need to understand what you're looking for and what you're not looking for with Yin. So that is the general counters or the mechanical aspects that counter her or that she counters. I've got a couple picks here that counter her or that she counters for both the jungle, solo, and carry role. And we'll go through those real quick. I've already mentioned most of them, but breaking them down here into the jungle, solo, and carry role may help you depending on where you like to play her or where you want to try to play her. So looking at picks first that counter her or that can shut her down or make her less valuable for you taking her through the draft phase. At jungle, I've got Chimera, Seraph, and Greystone. So these kind of, the idea behind these junglers countering her is good mobility, first off. Chimera, Seraph, and Greystone, she's going to potentially have a hard time getting away from any one of those three. But more importantly, early game pressure. Yin, at the jungle role specifically, is going to struggle early. I'm talking before level 6. She's going to struggle in the jungle, keeping up with farm. She's not going to be able to invade. There's no chance she's going to be able to invade unless you're just really good with her. And Chimera, Seraph, Greystone, they're going to punish you hard if you try to invade, and they also are going to have the potential to invade on you and potentially take some of Yin's early farm away. So, not looking forward to playing against a Chimera, Seraph, or Greystone in the jungle. They have too many abilities to chase her down, get away from her, invade early. They're going to get rolling sooner than her, and then, once it snowballs, you're going to be in trouble. Solo lane, this is where I've been trying to play her and trying to test her the most, and I have ran into some of these counters and had a problem with them. So in solo lane, heroes that counter her or that you should be picking against her if you do assume she's picking into their solo lane on the enemy team, I've got Shinbi, Feng Mao, Steel, and Quang. So I've already mentioned some of these. Shinbi is definitely an annoying one because she's going to have that mobility to double dash onto you, apply a bunch of stacks to you, and then she's going to have the unavoidable damage from the ult, which can really shut you down and win her the 1v1. Feng Mao, same kind of concept. He's got incredible mobility and the shield, which also gives him movement speed, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. And he's obviously got the execute, and he probably can get Yin into execute range a lot of the times, and his build is not really going to be as much health as some of the other solo laner tanks where her Sky Splitter is going to get value. So Feng Mao going to be a problem for her in a lot of games, but that's going to be a really skill dependent matchup. If the Feng Mao is incredibly good, he's going to win. If the Yin's incredibly good, she can still make it work for sure. Steel, you don't see Steel picked too often in the solo lane, but Steel will give you some trouble if you're trying to deal with him in the solo lane, depending on what items he's building. Obviously, he has the option to build Fire Blossom first item, which is going to just put a ton of damage on you when he's hitting you with that CC chain. Again, same concept as Feng Mao and Quang, who we're about to mention. He's going to apply shields to mitigate damage off of you, and you're really reliant on your damage as her to get anything done because you're not going to have any defenses built. And then finally, Quang, like I mentioned before, has erratic, unpredictable combos that he can hit you with. The tether is really going to shut down her only ability to get out. And he's got the shield, he's got true damage if he catches you with the tether and the lightning bolt. It's just a lot to deal with as a Yin who's reliant on out-damaging her opponent, essentially. So that's what I've got for solo lane. For carries, it's a little bit harder on both who she counters and who counters her, because, you've got supports and carries to think about, and also it depends on how good or what playstyle her support is playing with her at carry, because obviously she's not going to be the support. I've tried playing her at support. I tried her on support in the first day. Would not recommend it. Would not recommend it. Just not really. Doesn't have the kit for that. So looking at picks to pick against her or counters for her in the carry lane, I've got Murdoch. Murdoch's pretty straightforward. If she dives on him, he can potentially shotgun her off. Because of the way that her whip dash and root works, after she roots them, she flips off in a certain direction, so she's not going to be probably point blank on anyone right after she hits them with the whip root. And that means as long as the Murdoch's paying attention and can flick onto her quickly, he can shotgun her off. She's still probably going to be in auto range, especially if she hits her extended range. But it's just something to keep in mind. He's also got the root. He's also got good mobility with his speed up. And he's got unavoidable damage. So he's kind of got a big trifecta of what she does not want to play against. Next, I've got Muriel. Muriel can be a problem for Yin because if it's a good Muriel, she's going to be keeping damage off of her carry and also poking this Yin with slows, which are really annoying, especially if she's leveling the slow like she should be, and speeding up her carry, which could make it difficult for Yin to continue to close the gap because she only has that one catch-up ability. So Muriel, with a combo with the fact that Muriel's almost certainly building Martial first item and poking Yin back really hard, it's going to be hard for Yin to stay sustained in the carry role if she's got an enemy Yin to play, or enemy Muriel to play against. Yin's even with Sky Splitter on, you're probably not out healing a consistent harassment of Muriel slows. And then finally, I've got Drongo. Drongo, kind of a similar concept to Murdoch, except for Drongo also has the silence. So Drongo is a pretty good counter because if that Yin does jump on you and you've got your ult as Drongo, you can push away from her. If you've got your silence, you can silence her out of her extended ranged whip, and then she's just kind of a half range carry. You should be able to outspace her. And he just deals massive damage, especially if you start stacking up the rad rounds. So Drongo, overall, he's good. He's going to build pretty similar to Yin most of the time with kind of a crit build. And just going to be kind of a general decent carry to outspace. Has the slow from the boomerang to keep Yin slowed and keep her from catching up to him. But I think she should be able to reflect the boomerang a lot of the times. I've never done it, but she potentially could deflect the boomerang, and that could give her a little edge up on Drongo in certain situations. So that's what I've got for heroes that counter her. Let's talk about heroes that she counters or that she's going to perform well against. I've got, at the jungle role first, I've got Kalari, Crunch, and Rampage written down. This is it's kind of hard picking junglers that she's going to do well against because she is going to have such a slow start in jungle a lot of time and then be pretty strong late. But I've got Kalari, Crunch, and Rampage. Kalari does have the advantage of having similar verticality with the multiple jumps. So just like Yin can pull herself over ledges, Kalari can just jump over ledges. So that is kind of puts him on a little bit even footing. Thing about Kalari is Kalari's going to have a slow start just like Yin. So you're not usually worried about a Kalari invading your jungle too much or getting rolling too fast as far as ganking lanes. And you could potentially deflect knives. You have that kind of options. One of the things I was really thinking about with Kalari is if you're able to hit the root on Kalari, your team's going to be able to follow up on them. And Kalari is true melee versus Yin being ranged. Even if it's 50% range and you can't get your ability up, still going to give you a little gap, which is going to be difficult for Kalari to close. Next, we've got Crunch. Crunch, again, like I said, he does have some erratic combos that are going to be hard to deal with if you get caught by him, but you're generally not worried about a Crunch invading you early or getting rolling before level 6. And that's really where Yin needs to shine, is she needs to not get out-jungled prior to level 6, because once you have your level 6, you at least have some safety in the ability to rotate in, get more ganks, protect yourself in jungle 1v1s. Crunch, he's also going to be basically waiting for level 6 to get anything rolling, so you're not too worried about him early invading and stuff like that. And then Rampage, of course. Again, you're not worried about him prior to level 6 invading you too much. He's got a predictable projectile in the rock that you can potentially deflect and just completely shut down his entire engage. So that's on the table. He does have a dash, but it's not, or a jump I should say, but it's not a very good one overall. And also Rampage is going to be building massive health pool, which you're going to be able to counter pretty easily with the fact that you're almost certainly building Sky Splitter on Yin. So Kalari, Crunch, Rampage, I would be okay with playing against them as Yin in the jungle for sure. In solo lane, which is where I have the most experience, it's a little bit more straightforward who you're picking Yin into counter. I've got Grux, Sevrog, Terra, and Aurora written down. Now, I've already had some good games against Grux and against Aurora playing as Yin. Grux is pretty straightforward. He doesn't have incredible movement abilities, and he is very predictable what he's going to go for. If you just stay spaced out of where he can't hit the dash or the pull on you, you're pretty much safe. And then if he does hit the pull, you have your dash to get out, you have your whip pull to get out, so it's not too big of a deal. He's not going to be able to follow up on you with multiple CC combos. Even if he hits the stun on you, you just got to know from his ult, you just got to know immediately to pull out of there and just let his ult wear off. So Grux, not too bad. Build anti-heal and you'll be fine. Sevrog, again, he's building a massive health pool, so you're going to be able to wear him down. He does have decent mobility and a root, but you shouldn't, and he has his ult to push you off of him if you do dive him. So you may have a hard time taking him down, but he also is not really going to be able to pressure down a Yin, I would think, most of the time. He may out-sustain you sometimes, but his clear is not going to be nearly as fast, so I would definitely be happy playing against a Sev as a Yin, because you know if he hits the root, what is he going to do afterwards? Is he going to, if he swings into you, if he dashes into you to follow after he roots, you're now in range to just deal massive damage to him, so it's no big deal. Terra, again, pretty straightforward. She kind of is one of the ones that falls into both linear combos and predictable projectiles, because if you're spacing off of her like you can do with Yin, you're not going to have to worry about the triple swing axe hit on you that's going to deal true damage on the third one. You're not going to have to worry about that. All you're going to have to be looking for is her dash into you, which is very telegraphed, so you know what's going to happen. You can probably cancel her out of it if you think you can win the 1v1. Or her very predictable axe throw, which you're probably going to see her cock back, and then you can just deflect it or get out of the way of it. So Terra shouldn't be too much of a problem for you. Even if she hits her CC immunity ult, it just probably is an indication that you need to whip out instead of whipping onto her. So all good there. Aurora, again, like I said, pretty predictable combos. You know what she's looking for. Most Auroras are going to be building big health as well, so you can get good value out of your Sky Splitter. And if you're in the middle of the ring, when she hits the ring and you didn't get rooted by it, you can just pull yourself out of it. If you can somehow catch her while she's dashing away or while she's loading up the Ice Wall dash away animation, you can cancel her out of it with your root. Just a really strong, easy, predictable hero to play against as Yin. You probably don't even need to take some sort of cleanse. I would probably still take the cleanse, but you probably won't have to use it that much. It doesn't have any projectiles to deflect, but it's just kind of an easy hero to stay spaced away from because her abilities don't have long range. A lot of times if you're spaced correctly, she won't even be able to get the root ring, you inside of the root ring, so it's all good. And then carries that she counters, I have Revenant, Sparrow, and then a Zinx or a Narbash as the support. So Revenant, pretty straightforward. If you're building attack speed Yin like you're going to be, you're probably out DPSing and out sustaining Revenant most of the time. Worst case scenario, he hits you with his ult, and then now you just have a 1v1 with Rev that you probably can win. Depending on if you're just a little bit ahead of him, it should be not that difficult to win. No escapability, very reliant on his support, so Yin can probably take care of a Revenant, no problem. Sparrow, another one, no mobility to speak of, a little bit of movement speed bonuses that she gets, but no real mobility to speak of. If she hits her ult, you can just root onto her and probably immune that ult damage because she's not going to be able to hit you while you're zooming around in the air like that. She has some projectiles you can deflect. I wouldn't really try it. Look, the arrow, the piercing arrow moves pretty quick, so it may be difficult to catch, but it is still possible for you. And of course, if there is a Sparrow on the enemy team and you hit your ult in a team fight and it shuts down a Sparrow ult, then that's just trading an ult for an ult, plus you probably get more out of yours at that point. And then, like I said, at the support role, Zinx Narbash. Zinx does have good mobility and does throw a lot of harass at you that you may not be able to out heal, depending on who your support is. But like I said, I've deflected multiple Zinx frisbees and stunned both Zinx back and the carry, and it's a very satisfying feeling. And her whole deal with the revive, if she hits the revive on her or the carry, you're probably going to be able to position following that in a way where once they do revive, you're just going to get them again. So, because it's going to be pretty hard to get away from a Yin, especially if she still has her ult. And then Narbash, obviously the very telegraphed thunk coming in from him that you can either deflect or just avoid. And he does give him and his carry movement speed, which can be a problem. But if they're using that movement speed aggressively, you're probably still going to be able to get away from them. And if they're using it to escape, then you can just kind of weigh, do I really want to dedicate to chasing them? And if you do, you probably can get one of them, because if you root either him or the carry, it's going to burn up a lot of that time when they could be moving away with their boosted movement speed. And by the time you get out of that route and flip off of them, they're probably going to be done with their movement speed boost. So you can chase them down pretty easy. So that's what I've got for picks that counter her and that she counters specifically, as well as, of course, the general mechanics that she does well and poorly against. I hope all of that information helps you out. That did go a little long, but time to hop over to a Meta City, talk about builds real quick. Her builds, like I said, are pretty straightforward. There's only a couple items that people are really building on her right now. So we'll talk about those, and then we'll get out of here. Alrighty, so here we are on the Meta City builds page for Yin. Here we can see a lot of the builds that people have been building on her. Obviously, she's only been out for a while, so all of these are going to be version 1.2 related builds. And you start to look down these builds and you can see a lot of similar themes. Almost every build is including Sky Splitter. That makes sense because you're getting kind of the same stuff that you're getting out of her passive. A lot of these builds you're seeing Demolisher, because a lot of times you're building crit on her. You need as much pin as possible. And you can just look through and see what you're getting. Most of these are pretty straightforward. You see this one has 4 or 8 upvotes as well as 4 downvotes, because it's kind of got some weird stuff in here. You're building multiple Omnivamp, you're building Nightfall and Mutilator, which I probably wouldn't recommend almost ever building either of those, as well as Nuke Rounds. Fundamentally, what I want to talk about as far as builds is, one of the big things with her is you are prioritizing attack speed and sustain. So this just improves upon the passives that she get from her actual passive, which is stacking increased attack speed, and her passive off of her extended range ability, which is every third hit giving extra damage and sustain to her. So most of the time that's what you're building is attack speed and sustain, because the more attack speed you have, the more third auto attacks that you're proccing and getting that off of. Another thing that you're really fundamentally building on her, especially if you look at a lot of these, is since you're prioritizing auto attack damage, you're building crit and pin. Generally, for her, the best offense you can have is also going to be her best defense, because you're very rarely getting any value out of building tankiness. I've tried building tankiness. I've tried doing the Overlord build. It's just not, it doesn't work for it. It's not viable. You want as much offense as possible as your form of defense. So let's look through a couple of these and see what we see in common. Like I've said, Sky Splitter, you're going to see, the first 3-4 builds all here have Sky Splitter. This 5th one, this 7th one. Sky Splitter is almost a staple on her. Whether you're solo lane, jungle, carry, it's kind of the go-to. It's a go-to on a lot of carries right now. I mean, you're looking at heroes like Skylar are building it every time. Heroes that, you're probably building it a lot of times on just about every carry, Murdoch, Drongo. A lot of these builds, like you see this first one that has the most upvotes from this Paragon level player, is basically Sky Splitter and then into 5 crit items for 100% crit. So that's kind of the way you're going with her a lot of the times. I've done some testing. I've found some other stuff out. I like some of these builds that include Bonesaw and Citadel type builds, because it does give her extra slowdown potential, as well as, you know, Citadel giving you percent pin and a little bit of resistance. This one's interesting because it has Absolution thrown in there as well as your magical armor item. A lot of the times you're probably not even going to have space for a magical armor item, and if you do, you're really sacrificing just dealing more damage. We can see in a lot of these builds, like I said, Demolisher is going to be a frequent pickup. Imperator is even a frequent pickup in a lot of these builds you see, because they're kind of focusing on building 100% crit or near 100% crit. You're also seeing a Noxian Quiver built on her a lot of the times. It's definitely one of the standout items that I've found in testing her. If we look at, let's go to this first one here and just take a look at it, since it is kind of the most favorable build right now on a meta city. It's got her leveling order as prioritizing her, I believe this is the extended range. I usually prioritize the extended range, and it is just how it is. Alternative items. So here's the main items that people are building. This, like I said, is the standard 100% crit build, where you're building, you know, Tainted Rounds, Lightning Hawk, or Dust Devil, or both. Demolisher is almost always going to be, you're pretty much going to have to build Demolisher. And then you've got some other items in here, potentially Terminus, potentially Dust Devil, like I said. Ashbringer could be an interesting one. I've never built Ashbringer on her. I could see how it would be valuable to keep your lasso whip pull up more often. Spectra could also be interesting on her, since you are prioritizing attack speed. Like I said, the more attack speed you have, the more third auto attacks are going to hit and give her that extra damage, as well as that extra sustain. So I do see why people are liking this basically full crit build. It's going to take a while to get rolling. That's the thing. In solo lane, you're probably going to be mixing in an armor item here. You see some of these other builds, like this one, may be more applicable sometimes to solo lane, where you're building Sky Splitter into Draconum, and that's going to give you all the sustain you need in solo lane. With Draconum up, you're basically clearing one wave, and with Sky Splitter, you're going to be full healed. Lightning Hawk, like I said, I kind of prefer Dust Devil a lot of the times, but they're very interchangeable. Tainted Rounds, I've only built a couple times as my anti-heal item, because it does take a little bit to get online, but you could just build the anti-heal portion of it, the tier 2, and then come back and finish it later. Demolisher, I would probably have sooner than this in the build almost every time. You're going to want Demolisher. Potentially third item, fourth item at the latest, I would say. And I sometimes go a Noxian Quiver near the very beginning, potentially first or second item, just because of the way that its passive works. On her, she obviously doesn't have projectiles as her attacks, so she gets the bonus of attack speed and mitigation the lower her health gets, rather than these multi-projectiles. So a Noxian Quiver, Sky Splitter, Draconum, Demolisher, these are kind of the staples that you're seeing build on her. Like I said, again, I am a fan of Bonesaw on her. It can do very well, especially if you're planning on comboing it with Citadel. You probably don't need this much pin on her. You don't need Citadel percent pin, Basilisk Shred, and Demolisher. You don't need pin on her like that unless they're just building a ton of tanks. This is a supposedly a support build. Don't play her in support. That's just how it is. With Tranquility on her too, there's no need for that at all. But you see the theme here. It's crit items, it's attack speed items above all else, it's sustain, and you're getting pretty much all of that from Sky Splitter except for crit. So I would just say the staple items, no matter where you're playing her: Sky Splitter, Demolisher, Draconum most of the time. Even if it's going to be your only item that's not crit based, I would take Draconum a lot of the times, or Citadel if you're doing a Bonesaw related build. So those are kind of the go-tos. Like I said, Dust Devil or Lightning Hawk are both also very good if you want to build one of them early. This build right here does look pretty interesting to me. Terminus is okay, but it no longer gives you attack speed, so you're going to have to build. And in this build, you've got after Sky Splitter, Dust Devil, you're going to have Terminus, Demolisher, Imperator. This could definitely be pretty good, and then finishing off your attack speed near the end of the game with Equinox. I would probably slide Equinox in here third, leave Demolisher, Terminus over here, and then Imperator last. Maybe something more like this build right here, like I said, where you're going Sky Splitter straight into Draconum, into Lightning Hawk, Tainted, and Demolisher, Imperator last. So you get the concept. She's not complicated to build on, like I said. The minimal build diversity does hurt her because you're not going to have the option to really flex many of these items out of the build and still get value out of her late game. It's just not going to happen. Bonesaw start is also very viable, depending on how you're going to be playing her. This one is like a jungle type build where you're going Eviscerator. You're probably not going to be going Bonesaw Spectra start most of the time. You're probably going to be going Bonesaw straight into picking up your Sky Splitter. Sky Splitter last just isn't going to be valuable. Probably Bonesaw, Sky Splitter, Citadel type start there. So play around with her. Like I said, the clips from the beginning when we were talking about her pros, cons, and counters all came from a stream where I was testing builds on her. You can check out that full stream in the description and see us go through some builds. You'll notice some of the items that I tried out there, like Earthshaker is not on here at all. You do not want to build anything that prioritizes her abilities or her ability damage, like this Nuke Rounds here. It's just not valuable. Or like Nightfall, Mutilator, it's just not valuable. Do not prioritize her abilities in any way. She's going to be doing damage with autos, and that's about it. So that's going to do it. Check out Ometa City if you want to actually look through any of these builds more specifically, or check out some of these. And some people go through, put in more work than others, and putting on alternative items that you can build here. Like, yeah, stuff like this. Malady, don't build Malady. Don't do this. Don't build these ability-based builds. It could work in very niche scenarios, but you're just sacrificing way too much to build any sort of ability-based build on her. Just don't do it. Go for the crits. You see what we've got here. Crits and auto attack speed are king. Proccing those passives as much as can. Stacking up her true passive and stacking up her every third auto passive from her extended range are the way to go on her. Offense is going to be your best defense for her. And just get out there and play with her, because it does take a lot of getting used to. It took me multiple games before I could figure out how to get the most out of her, know her limits, when you can go in, when you can win 1v1s, and when you got to get out, because you've only got one ability to make that decision with, unless you've got her ult available and your blink up. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Hope you guys were able to learn something about Yin. Hopefully this helps you improve as Yin, as well as know what to pick against her or how to play against her. You're probably not going to see her picked too much right now. She's not a super favorable pick or ban type hero. We may see some buffs come to her, or she may stay about the same. I don't really expect us to see too many nerfs come to her, as we've seen with most of the heroes on release, where they release way broken, too strong, and then they have to get pulled back. I don't think we're going to see that on her, but either way, practice with her if you're interested in playing her, because it's going to take some practice. Get in those standard games, try out some builds, order. Usually I would say, you're building to your opponent in solo lane as much as possible, but in reality, you can't build to your opponents too much on Yin, because there's kind of a set thing that you're looking for. The only thing that you've got building to your opponents wise is, when do you build Sky Splitter? It's more of when do you build the items. Do you build Sky Splitter and Demolisher early because they're going to be tankier and you want to get through that tank? Do you throw Basilisk in second item after Sky Splitter to just completely shred armor if they're building armor first item? Or can you get away with going something more like this, where you go Sky Splitter into Lightning Hawk into Tainted and just shut down that Grux's healing, or, whatever it may be. Shut down that Sevrog super early and stuff, those type of builds in solo lane. In jungle, you're going to have to prioritize clear, which means first item you pretty much need Sky Splitter to give you both sustain and faster clear. So, and then potentially a Noxian Quiver as well, which I really like. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Come check out the streams. Let me know what you guys think about Yin in the comments. Let me know what your go-to build items are on her. I kind of doubt that if you're truly experienced in playing her, that it's going to be many items that aren't mentioned here, because it's just hard to make them valuable. So Thanks for watching. We will catch y'all in the next one, and we'll catch y'all in the streams.